Welcome to the JAMODI podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders. So let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is JAMODI, just a matter of doing it. The JAMODI podcast is powered by Sideline Interactive. Sideline Interactive is the leading manufacturer for high-quality, innovative scoring tables and LED video display boards that help coaches and schools bring more excitement to fans, create huge fundraising opportunities, and make their jobs easier. Visit sidelineinteractive.com to check out their amazing products. How does culture drive performance?
I think culture is the biggest backbone of performance. My pastor, when I was my year after college, I was here in Indianapolis. I actually go to this church again now that I'm back with the Pacers. He said, if your strategy is the race car, then culture is the racetrack. And without a strong foundation, a solid racetrack, the strategy and whatever you're trying to do as that race car, it can't move, right? And if there's dents in it, if there's potholes like we have a ton in Indiana, that race car is going to get torn up. And so I think that without a strong culture, I think having a consistent, strong performance ability to perform is difficult. And I think, one thing that we all have a culture. Everyone has a culture.
Yeah.
To me, culture is about intentionality. And, we all talk about like, what is culture? What is this? And I had a guy that I worked with when I was a head coach for the Long Island Nets, Brooklyn's G League team, that made it really simple for me. And I've used it ever since. Is culture is just behavior. And so the intentionality of what are the behaviors of our program that we're going to be intentional about living out is what culture is. And I think the best cultures are the ones that are intentional. To say we just have a culture and to not consistently live it out, I think creates a instability in what you're doing and who you're saying you're going to be. And so I'm a big believer in culture. I've coached at all the levels, all the way up to the NBA. The culture of your team and the intentionality behind that culture, I've seen it done well. I've seen it not done so well. All the way down to when I was coaching 8th grade girls, when I was coaching college, same thing. I think culture is number one thing, and I think it is the number one thing that drives our performance.
I love that idea of the racetrack. And I mean, I literally am just coming off of our second period athletics where I had, 16 to 18 young men. We were working on skill, but they were walking quite a bit in between drills. And it's that decision that we have as coaches in that moment. It's the spring, we're out of season. How much do I fight for that? And how much do I just allow them just to be or do what they want at that point? Talk about, because in my brain, I was never near I played in Iceland. That was the closest to pro basketball, the only place in the world that wanted me to play there, but in my mind, I think that every NBA team has a fantastic culture. They're pros, they're professionals, they have the best minds in the world. But how hard do you have to fight for your culture, even at that level?
I would say not every NBA team, just to kind of address that, has a great culture. Because again, culture is behavior, and behavior is what? People, right? And so there's a lot of things that get in the way of behavior, and just our human nature gets in the way of that. But at this level, and I think at any level, but at this level, the biggest thing I think with culture at this level is involving players. And I think, I've said before, like what we do at the NBA level, because of the structure of it, the amount of power that the players have. As a coach, you have to be really humble and understand where you sit in that. But I think that applies at every single level. That's how it should be at every level. That's how it should be if I'm a grade school coach, I'm a middle school coach, high school, whatever the case may be. It's about the players, right? And so we have to, in middle school, you don't necessarily have to involve your players to build a great culture. But at this level, you do.
Yeah,
you should at the middle school level, right? At any level. But at this level, you have to. if you're going to come in, go ahead.
No, involving them and letting them run the show are very different things, because you don't want middle school or high school kids, maybe even college kids necessarily running the show. But I love your idea of involving them. Keep going.
Yeah, we don't want our players to run the show either. I mean, it's the reality of it, right? But we have to involve them. Like, imagine coaching LeBron James and saying, I am Ronald Nord coaching LeBron James, and this is exactly what I'm going to do when I come. This is what my culture is going to look like, and it's not going to work, right? LeBron has such a power and a weight in the team, for the organization, for the whole league, that you have to go to him and become a partner with him in what's going to happen in the culture building. And so I learned that the hard way when I was coaching the G League. My first year as a G League coach, I came in, I said, this is what we're about. Boom, 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 boom. And our players were like, over the course of the season, they didn't really say that, but over the course of the season, it was like, I mean, all that stuff sounds good, but we're not living that every day. And I did a horrible job, of making it important and finding ways for the guys to take it in as their own. My second year, I was like, we're not going to do it this way. Again, I had a great assistant that helped me with this. And we really came to the players, and we did a great session where the players came up with the values of who we're going to be. They came up with 4. We said 3 to 4. They came up with those values. They came up with the definitions of those values are. And I was able to, and I agreed with them. They were very good. The coaches were all a part of it. But I was able to, and our whole staff was able to coach them through that. And that's what I mean by involving the players and how important it is to do that at this level. Year one, it was Ronald Nord's words and Ronald Nord's values, which I think are important as the head coach, especially. But if the players aren't involved in the process, especially at this level, but I think at every level, I don't think it is as meaningful to the players.
I was just thinking about how even whatever level you're at, and normally it is coaches come in and set the culture. Like literally we have 6 words on our wall in our locker room. And when you kind of hit me right in the stuff, I'm wondering how many of those players could care less about those words on the wall, because they didn't have anything to do with it. It's just been, now they're good words. Like your 4 things. When you came in, I'm pretty sure as a player, because I was a pleaser, I would have just fallen right in line with whatever.
Same.
But what's the harm in scraping those words off the wall every year and putting up those that the players feel like this is really how we want to show up, what we want to do? That's powerful.
Yeah, with that too, because I went to Butler. Butler has 6 specific, values as a part of the men's basketball program, really as a part of the athletic department, but as a part of the men's basketball program. And, I mean, they're great words. They're fantastic, right? And I think it's good to have those. Some programs, that is just who you are. You have your words on the wall, and those don't necessarily need to change. But if I asked every single player what the words are, number one, do you remember all 6? First question. If they can't remember all 6, you're not good, you're not doing good enough. And number 2, if they can't all say, when you ask them what they mean as a second question, if they can't all say similar, maybe not the exact same word for word thing, but if they can't say similar things, again, I don't think you're driving your culture well enough, and it hasn't been meaningful to them. It's great if our culture is meaningful to us as a coach, but that really doesn't matter. They're the ones that are playing. They're the ones that are living it out. And so even with those words, and I've read this, and I think it's good. Some coaches have their words, and those are their words. That's what their program is about, and that's great. But team by team, what those words mean for that team might change year to year. And so let's say one of our words is thankfulness, right? Thankfulness for my team this year may look differently in action than what thankfulness will for the team next year. And so I think it's important for us just to come back to our players every year and be really intentional about what it means. Just to say our program is going to be thankful. You're going to come here and you're going to be thankful. I think it's
be thankful today.
Right. I think it's really difficult, right?
Yeah.
They have to understand what that is. It's like what we do with our children. Like we tell our children, the different values of our family. But, why, my 4-year-old daughter, she questions everything. Well, why am I doing that? Right. And we have to be really intentional about helping them understand why we're saying thankfulness, whatever those words are, year to year.
I love that idea of, in effect, quizzing your players. Give them a written test and have the things that you hold dear and important as a coach. One of our biggest jobs is to communicate that clearly. And what I love about PGC is the sticky language, the ability to remember things. And I think it's the last night before highlight at Point Guard College, we have a little time for the directors just to talk. And I would always talk, it's about favorites, right? Favorites is one of those things that it's real, and coaches have favorites, and it's your right to be a favorite. Well, what does it look like to be a favorite? So I would have the players say, hey, most likely your program has pillars, standards, a culture. Will you write it down, please? And I'd say, raise your hand if you feel like you got it all. I mean, it was less than half of the room knew exactly. So yeah, you're right. It's on them to know it, but then it's on us to make sure that we're living it out and we're talking about it every day. Can't imagine how hard that is with professionals to do that. That's got to be challenging.
Yeah, no, it's it just goes back to just relationships, I think, right? And intentionality. Like I know I keep using that word, but if you go a day, back to kind of what you were saying about your group walking, like if you go a day where that's an important part of your program and you go a day without addressing it, then that's just one less day that you're being intentional about the things that you want to live out. And so we have to do that at this level. And it may look a little different than it does at the high school level or at the college level or at the elementary school level. But we have to be intentional. And again, the buy-in from the players, especially at this level, is so important.
Yeah. What do you do? Let's just say you have normally you have a few individuals that whatever, like you and I, whatever coach you say, I got it, I'm in there, I'm all in. How do you, especially at that level, bring some of those other players along that maybe they're coming from a tough situation, or just having a bad day, or somehow they've been so talented that those habits they've never been held accountable to those. How do you bring them along?
Yeah, that is that is the name of the game at this level. It's not easy, but to me, I think it goes back to the relationship. The head coach or certain assistant may not have a great relationship with that player. There's one player that I've coached in particular that he didn't have a great relationship with almost anybody on the staff. They had a good working relationship, but not like someone he would come to, talk to, pour his heart out to. But I was fortunate to have that relationship with him. And so it may look like the head coach saying to me, hey, so-and-so struggling with this. Can we figure out what's going on? Or can you talk to him? Can we find a interesting strategy, a way to get him on board with what's happening? But I think especially at this level, it goes back to relationships. Our players, because of how much money they make, because of how public they are, there's times where they lack trust in people, and that's understandable. And so to be in the building and have someone they trust and can go to is really important. And we have so many people that are part of our organizations. That person could be the athletic trainer, the assistant athletic trainer, the massage therapist. It could be that person. But understanding those key people that are in their lives and being able to speak to them through that person, I think, is important as the head coach, but even as other members on the staff.
That's a great point. It made me think of I had the pleasure of talking to Kevin Eastman on here, and golly, I don't know. I mean, you're intimidating enough just because of who you are and what you do. But then Kevin Eastman and his experience, I had to remember, like, hey, stay present, like actually ask questions. Don't just stare at them. But he had a great point, and along the same lines that you just, and you nailed it. Send messages through other people, and it could be actual people. And he would find out. He would ask players, "Who's your favorite? Who do you look up to? What professional, any sport, do you follow?" And if it's Tom Brady, he would go through and find when Tom Brady said something that this player really needed. You need to be a better communicator with your teammates. He'd find a clip or a message and he'd write it out and he'd give it to them. And like, what a great, but you're saying the same thing. Find somebody in your organization, as a head coach, it might not be the best thing for it to be always coming from you. Cause man, just like we could tune our parents out when we were younger, players can tune us out.
And that all goes, the overarching thing. And again, this is at our level, and you have to have it at our level. You don't have to have it at, I don't think, college, high school, elementary school, but it's humility, right? It's the humility to understand that it's not about you.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be about you. And it's about trying to get the best out of your players. And what is that? I love Coach Eastman's way of doing that. That might be someone else. And one thing that we have here at our level that's great is we have, just being a part of a professional sports organization, you get access to a lot of people, right? And people that you can just kind of call up, hey, this is the Indiana Pacers. And so we can make certain people available to our players that may be a better connection than anybody in the organization, or has, been on a similar path. This is an example completely different, but something that was cool yesterday was Marcus Smart was the first guard to be named, Defensive Player of the Year since Gary Payton.
Wow.
Well, what did the NBA and the Celtics do? They brought Gary Payton to send him the award, right? We have kind of access to people like that. And I think we all do. We have access to other NBA players, but college programs, high school programs have access to people locally or that have played for the program before, whatever the case may be, that can be great assets for the players. But again, that comes with a humility from the coach and the coaching staff more than anything else, to know it's not necessarily, doesn't have to be you that's presenting the message.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the JAMODI podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.